She gets mixed up sometimes, my sister said softly, while helping herself to another cookie at the church gathering. The women around the table nodded politely, pretending not to stare at me. I felt my face burn with embarrassment as my sister continued explaining how I'd become forgetful after turning 70. Then our pastor walked into the room holding a sealed envelope with my name written across the front. I remember the way the fellowship hall suddenly went quiet around me. Not fully quiet, just enough for me to hear forks scraping paper plates and somebody whispering near the coffee urn. My sister Linda sat there smiling like she was helping me. That hurt worse than if she'd yelled. Pastor Ray walked over slowly. "Margaret," he said, gentle as could be, "this came by courier for you." Linda reached for it before I could. "I'll hold on to that," she said quickly. "She gets overwhelmed with paperwork lately." That was the first moment I realized something ugly was happening behind my back. I pulled the envelope toward me. "I can still open my own mail." A couple ladies looked down at their laps. Nobody wanted to get involved. Church people are like that sometimes. They'll pray for your pain while sitting close enough to watch it happen. Linda laughed softly. "See? Defensive again?" My hands were shaking, but not from confusion. From humiliation. The envelope came from an attorney office in Knoxville. My stomach tightened the second I saw my late cousin Harold's name typed inside the letter. Harold passed 3 weeks earlier. We'd grown up together outside Chattanooga. He never had children. Linda leaned closer. "What does it say?" I folded the paper before she could read it. "Private." That smile faded from her face for half a second. Now, I need to explain something about my sister. Linda always cared deeply about appearances, church reputation, proper family image, who sat where during funerals, which grandchild got mentioned from the pulpit. She liked control more than kindness, though she hid it behind casseroles and Bible verses. After Harold died, she started calling me every morning. "You taking your medication? You remember your appointments? You sure you should still be driving?" At first, I thought she was worried about me. I was 74, widowed, living alone in Murfreesboro after my husband Earl passed. But little things started bothering me. She'd answer questions for me in public before I could speak. She told church members I repeated stories. She corrected me constantly. One Sunday, she even whispered, "Don't embarrass yourself," when I stood up to read scripture. I started noticing people watching me carefully after that, like they were waiting for proof. That afternoon, after the church social, Linda followed me into the parking lot. "What was in the letter?" she asked. "Legal business." "With Harold?" I looked at her. "Why are you so interested?" She crossed her arms. "Because somebody needs to think clearly here." That sentence sat heavy in my chest all evening. Around 8 that night, my phone rang. It was Pastor Ray. His voice sounded uncomfortable. "Margaret, your sister asked me something earlier today." I sat down slowly at my kitchen table. "What kind of something?" A long pause. "She wanted to know if the church had resources for elderly members showing cognitive decline." I felt cold all over. Then he said the thing that made my stomach drop completely. "She also asked if anyone from the congregation had noticed you becoming confused about finances lately." And that's when I realized Linda wasn't just embarrassing me in church. She was building something. The next morning, Linda showed up at my house without calling first. That alone told me something was wrong. My sister never came anywhere unannounced. Linda believed surprise visits were for rude people and Jehovah's Witnesses. But there she stood on my porch at 9 in the morning, holding 2 gas station coffees and wearing that tight church smile. "I was worried about you," she said as she walked inside before I invited her. I closed the door slowly behind her. My house suddenly felt smaller. She sat at my kitchen table like she owned the place. Her eyes moved around the room while she talked, lingering on unpaid bills near the toaster, Earl's old medicine bottles I still hadn't thrown away, the stack of sympathy cards from Harold's funeral. "You've let things pile up," she said quietly. "I've been grieving." "We all grieve, Margaret." That irritated me more than it should have. Linda had been married 3 times, buried none of them. She had no idea what 38 years with one man does to a house after he's gone. She slid 1 coffee toward me. "Pastor Ray told me you sounded upset last night. You asked him if I had dementia." Her face tightened immediately. "I asked because I care." "No, you asked because you want people looking at me differently." "That's ridiculous." "Is it?" For a second, neither of us spoke. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out a folder. The exact same kind Harold's attorney had mailed me. "I've already spoken with someone," she said softly, "just in case." I stared at her. "What someone?" "An elder care attorney." The room felt suddenly hot. Linda folded her hands carefully. "Margaret, I think you need help managing things now." I laughed once. Not because it was funny, because I couldn't believe my own sister was sitting in my kitchen saying this to me, like I was already halfway gone. "I still pay my own bills." "You forgot choir practice twice." "I missed 1 rehearsal." "You nearly overdrew your checking account in March." "I transferred money the same day." She leaned forward gently, almost like speaking to a child. "This is exactly what I mean. You become defensive whenever anyone tries helping you." That sentence hit me hard because I realized she'd rehearsed all this. Every response, every concern, every fake expression of worry. Then she finally said Harold's name. "Did the attorney tell you how much he left?" There it was, the real conversation. I looked straight at her. "You already know there's money involved." She hesitated too long. "People talk." "No," I said quietly. "You've been digging." Linda sighed dramatically. "Margaret, you cannot manage a large inheritance alone at your age." I felt something ugly rise in my chest. Harold's attorney had informed me the day before that Harold left me nearly everything. His house outside Knoxville, investment accounts, land, enough money to change the rest of my life completely. And somehow Linda already knew. Not only knew, prepared. That's when I remembered something strange from Harold's funeral. Linda disappearing for almost an hour after the service, whispering with Harold's stepdaughter near the parking lot. I suddenly understood she'd probably been trying to find out what was in the will before I even got the letter. "You told people I'm confused," I said. "I told people I'm concerned. You embarrassed me in church. I protected you in church." I stood up so fast my chair scraped hard against the floor. "You are not protecting me." Linda stood too now, calm, cold, controlled. "You live alone. Your memory slips. You're emotional. And now suddenly you inherited money." She lowered her voice. "People take advantage of elderly women every day." I walked toward the front door and opened it. "You need to leave." Instead of moving, she stared at me with this awful little look of disappointment. Then she said something that made my blood run cold. if you force this issue, people are going to start asking for medical evaluations. Silence filled the whole house. I think that was the exact moment I became afraid of my own sister, because that wasn't concern anymore. That was a threat. And 3 days later, somebody from Adult Protective Services knocked on my front door. I opened the door expecting a package. Instead, a young woman with a clipboard stood on my porch beside a sheriff's deputy. "Mrs. Margaret Wheeler?" she asked carefully. My heart started pounding before she even finished the sentence. "I'm Denise Harper with Adult Protective Services." The deputy kept his eyes on the driveway like he didn't want to be part of it. I remember gripping the edge of the door so hard my fingers hurt. Denise gave me a practiced little smile. "We received concerns regarding your ability to safely manage independently. There are moments in life where humiliation becomes physical. You actually feel it in your skin. That was one of them." I looked past her toward the street. Mrs. Talbert from across the road was watering her flowers slower than usual. Watching. Small towns notice everything. "What concerns?" I asked quietly. Denise glanced at her clipboard. "Reports of memory confusion, financial vulnerability, emotional instability after bereavement." Every word sounded like Linda. Every single one. The deputy finally looked at me with embarrassment in his face. I think he knew this was ugly. "I'm fine," I said. "Of course," Denise replied softly. "This is just routine." Routine. Like my whole life had become paperwork. They came inside. I hated that part most. Watching strangers walk through the home Earl and I built together, Denise checking the kitchen, looking at expiration dates, asking if I knew what year it was. At one point, she asked me to count backward from 100. I almost laughed in her face. Instead, I said, "Do you know how insulting this is?" Her expression softened a little. "Mrs. Wheeler, these reports usually come from family trying to help." That sentence nearly broke my heart, because only somebody who never lived through family betrayal could still believe that. Then came the worst moment. Denise asked, "Do you know approximately how much money recently came into your possession?" There it was. Not safety. Money. I looked directly at her. "Did my sister tell you about my inheritance?" Silence. That told me enough. An hour later, they finally left. Denise apologized twice before walking out the door. The deputy nodded politely without meeting my eyes. But the damage was done. By evening, 2 church members had already called checking on me. Checking. That Southern church word people use when gossip already started. One woman even asked if I should still be driving myself to Sunday service. I sat alone in my living room after sunset, staring at Earl's recliner, feeling something I hadn't felt since his funeral. Unsafe. Not from strangers. From my own blood. Then the real shock came. Around 7:30, my phone rang. Harold's attorney. "Mrs. Wheeler," he said carefully, "there's something you need to know immediately." My stomach tightened again. He explained someone had contacted his office that afternoon, claiming concerns about my competency regarding the inheritance proceedings. Someone requested delays until mental fitness could be clarified. I closed my eyes. "Linda." The attorney lowered his voice. "Between us, this is becoming unusual." "Can she stop me from receiving it?" "Not easily," he said, "but she can create expensive complications if she keeps pushing competency concerns." Complications. That's how they describe your life once lawyers get involved. I barely slept that night. Every creak in the house sounded different. Every passing car made me look out the window. By morning, I made a decision. I drove straight to Nashville and hired my own attorney. Her name was Evelyn Price, mid-60s, sharp eyes, no nonsense. The kind of woman who'd spent decades watching families destroy each other over money. I told her everything. Church, a P.S., the threats, the inheritance. Linda calling me confused. Evelyn listened quietly the entire time. Then she leaned back in her chair and asked one question. Has your sister ever had financial problems? I hesitated. Linda's husband lost his construction business 2 years earlier. Their lake house suddenly went up for sale last fall. And 3 months ago, Linda borrowed $5,000 from me claiming medical bills. My chest went cold. Oh my God, I whispered. Evelyn nodded slowly like she'd seen this story before. Then she opened a folder and said something that made my hands start shaking all over again. Mrs. Wheeler, your sister may already have tried accessing your assets before Harold even died. Evelyn turned her monitor toward me. Do you recognize this account number? I stared at the screen without understanding at first. Then my stomach dropped. It was mine. My emergency savings account. The one Earl and I opened 15 years earlier. Evelyn tapped a printed document. 3 months ago, someone attempted to add secondary authorization access online. I looked up slowly. What does that mean? It means someone tried attaching another user to your banking profile. My mouth went dry. The request had been denied because the birth date entered didn't match the account records exactly. One wrong digit, one digit. That was the only thing that stopped it. Who tried? I whispered. Evelyn slid another page toward me. The authorization request listed Linda's full legal name. For a moment, I honestly thought I might be sick. I remembered Linda sitting in my kitchen after Earl's funeral, helping me organize paperwork, offering to simplify things, asking where I kept passwords, saying she worried I'd forget something important. All that time, Evelyn's voice stayed calm. Mrs. Wheeler, I need you to prepare yourself. This doesn't look impulsive. It looks planned. I sat there frozen while 20 different memories suddenly changed shape in my head. Linda insisting on attending doctor appointments. Linda asking about my medications. Linda telling church friends she worried about my memory. Linda pushing power of attorney papers, not concern, preparation. Then Evelyn handed me another document, property records. Linda and her husband were nearly $400,000 in debt. Second mortgage, business loans, credit lawsuits, 2 delinquent accounts already filed in county court. I stared at the papers until the words blurred. She wanted Harold's inheritance, I said quietly. Evelyn nodded once. And she likely realized the easiest way to control it was by controlling you. I started crying right there in that office. Not loud, not dramatic. Just quiet tears from a woman realizing her own sister had been slowly building a case against her for months. Evelyn handed me tissues and waited. Then she said something that changed everything. Mrs. Wheeler, there's more. She opened a final folder. Inside were printed emails. Church emails. My chest tightened immediately. How did you get those? One of the church board members contacted me anonymously this morning after hearing APS had visited your home. I began reading, and I felt my whole body go cold. Linda had been emailing Pastor Ray and 2 church elders for weeks, describing me as unstable, forgetful, paranoid, possibly vulnerable to financial scams. One email said, "I'm afraid Margaret may embarrass herself publicly once inheritance matters become final." Another, "She becomes angry whenever anyone questions her decisions." Then I saw the worst one. The email sent 3 days before the church gathering. "If things continue declining, we may need to discuss conservatorship before she harms herself financially." Conservatorship. I looked up at Evelyn like I couldn't breathe. She was trying to take my rights away. Yes. That single word shattered something inside me. Because conservatorship doesn't just mean help. It means losing control of your money, your home, your decisions, your life. And suddenly, Pastor Ray handing me that envelope at church made horrible sense. Linda expected that letter publicly, expected me to look confused, expected witnesses, expected the church to start believing her story completely. I covered my mouth with my hand. My God. Evelyn leaned forward. "Mrs. Wheeler, your sister was building documentation to present you as mentally incompetent before the inheritance transferred fully into your possession." I thought about every smile Linda gave me lately, every casserole, every concern, every prayer request, a performance. Then Evelyn said the sentence that truly terrified me. If the bank request had worked and if she secured temporary conservatorship authority, she could have legally controlled every dollar Harold left you. Silence filled the office. Finally, I asked the question I'd been avoiding since this nightmare began. "What do I do now?" Evelyn's eyes hardened. "Now," she said, "we stop your sister before she files first." And that same evening, Linda announced during Wednesday night prayer meeting that the family would soon be making difficult decisions about my care. Wednesday night prayer meetings used to comfort me. Potluck casseroles, folding chairs, soft piano music drifting through the sanctuary while people whispered about grandchildren and surgeries and weather. That night felt different the second I walked inside. Conversations stopped too fast. Eyes moved away too quickly. Linda sat near the front beside Pastor Ray, wearing a pale blue sweater and the expression of a grieving daughter preparing herself for something difficult. I almost turned around and left. Then I thought about Earl, about Harold, about every year I spent quietly holding families together while people like Linda learned how to weaponize kindness. So I kept walking. The sanctuary felt ice cold. I sat alone halfway back. Nobody joined me. Pastor Ray began prayer requests. A few routine things first. Hospital visits, a sick grandson, somebody's knee surgery. Then Linda slowly stood. Her voice shook just enough to sound believable. "I'd appreciate prayers for my sister Margaret," she said softly. "Our family may be facing some hard decisions soon regarding her well-being and care." The room went completely still. I could actually hear somebody set down a coffee cup. Linda lowered her eyes like she was carrying some terrible burden. "She's been struggling lately, and we just want to do what's best for her." There it was, publicly done now. Not whispers anymore, a performance. I stood up before I even realized I was moving. My knees felt weak, but my voice didn't. "No," I said. Linda froze. I looked around that sanctuary slowly, at people I'd worshipped beside for 30 years, people who brought me pies after Earl died, people who sat at my table, sang beside me, hugged me every Sunday while secretly discussing whether I was losing my mind. Then I pulled a thick folder from my purse. Evelyn prepared it that afternoon. Bank records, emails, debt filings, everything. My sister has spent months trying to convince this church I'm incompetent. I said quietly. Not because I'm sick, because she wanted control of my inheritance. Gasps spread across the room. Linda's face drained white instantly. That's not true, she whispered. I handed copies directly to Pastor Ray. You received those emails, Pastor. His hands shook opening them. The sanctuary turned dead silent except for paper moving. Linda suddenly looked terrified. Good, for once. Good. Pastor Ray's face changed the more he read. Then one of the elders took the documents from him. Then another. Nobody looked at Linda anymore. They looked at me. Finally. Actually looked at me. Linda stepped toward me fast. Margaret, you don't understand. No, I said. You don't understand. My voice cracked then. Not from weakness. From heartbreak. You tried to erase me while I was still alive. That landed hard enough to make people visibly uncomfortable. Linda started crying immediately, loud enough to sound convincing, but nobody moved toward her. Pastor Ray slowly removed his glasses. Linda, he said carefully, did you contact Adult Protective Services against your sister? She opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again, and that silence answered everything. A woman near the piano covered her mouth. One elder muttered, Lord, have mercy. Linda suddenly turned toward me with panic replacing the performance. You don't know the pressure we were under, she whispered harshly. Todd's business collapsed. We were drowning. I stared at her. And you decided to bury me alive to save yourselves. She broke then. Really broke. Not graceful tears anymore. Angry ones. You were going to die with all that money anyway. The sanctuary exploded into noise. Somebody gasped loud enough to echo. Pastor Ray actually stepped backward. And right there in front of the whole church, my sister realized she finally said the honest part out loud. I remember looking at her face and seeing absolutely nothing familiar left in it. Just desperation. Just greed. Just fear. Then Pastor Ray handed the folder back to me with trembling hands and said quietly, Margaret, I think you should contact the police. And Linda screamed my name across the sanctuary just as 2 sheriff deputies walked through the front doors. Some stories end quietly, but the damage stays with people for years. If this story meant something to you, leave a comment below and subscribe for more real emotional stories like this one.